To order. Roll call, please. Here.
Mr. Donahue?
Here.
Ms. Greenfield?
Here.
Mr. Hammond?
Here.
Ms. Burnett?
Here.
Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Ms. Mara?
Here.
Notice of this meeting was provided to the Burnsville News, Courier News, and the Star Ledger, filed with the municipal clerk, and posted on the municipal bulletin board on December 11th, 2018. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have no presentations, right? Nothing. So we will go on to open session. At this point, the mayor and council welcome comments from any members of the public to help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit the opportunity for anyone who wishes to be heard. We ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you read from a prepared statement, please provide a copy to the clerk so that they're reflected in the minutes, and please keep your comments respectful and courteous. Anybody like to speak? Steve? Just give your name and address to the clerk.
Steve Reynolds, Stevens Street. You may have gone over this a week or two ago when you passed the ordinance to charge for the turf field. I guess my question, I don't understand how that works. Are we just charging outside entities, or are we charging in-town programs such as high school teams, middle school teams? How does that work?
I believe it's everybody.
It's everybody, but I think with the school, there was always sort of a different arrangement where we didn't bill each other, but I understand that's sort of being talked about right now.
Yeah, but right now it's any of the private clubs, the youth games.
Like football across?
With
Yeah.
football, correct.
Right.
Okay.
And that's just for the turf, not the Evan Cow or the other fields.
Okay. So I know we've talked a couple times in different groups about the field and its conditions, specifically the puddling. I think that's an issue that we really need to keep working on and focus on getting in front of the county, because the puddling is a big issue. And I think, and the more I'm talking to people, contractors who do this type of work, when you have puddling like that and it gets warm, it creates mold, and it becomes a big problem for the kids. So I think, and the other committees that we're, that we're on and that we're talking about, I think everyone needs to consciously really start thinking about how big a problem this is for this town and for these kids using this field, because it can be a bigger problem than I think what we originally thought. So.
Did you get my email?
I did.
Okay.
I'll be there at rec committee, and then I'll be over
Okay.
after.
Yeah, because we're going to work on that with that group,
Yeah,
hopefully.
I've got videos, 3 different occasions where at the middle school, and then 5 minutes later at the high school, and I can show you the contrast and the difference of the drainage, and it's astounding. I mean, it's amazing. You throw a ball down, water splashes everywhere at the middle school. You go to the high school, it's bone dry. So I think it's a big problem that we need to really keep working on and trying to get it resulting fixed.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I don't know if you would know the answer to this, but is the puddling, I know that the field always had puddling issues before the turf went in. Didn't the turf people eliminate that problem before they put the turf in?
It's, well, I think, we're going to...
So what it is, it's an application of the sub-base and flat drainage system that when the old field, whatever the old field did doesn't matter, because you're ripping up the topsoil, you're taking some dirt out, and then you are putting back an application of stone and flat drains that then lead out into trenches, and it's essentially pitched, and it gets all the water out of here. So the contractor who was contracted by the county to install this, in my opinion, did it improperly.
Well, yes, so can't we go back to that contractor and
Well,
see if they can
first we
do
need empirical data,
Okay.
not anecdotal data, to understand exactly what the issue is and what the extent of the issue is, and whether or not something is actually not meeting the design standards that were.
I can tell you that it's not, because turf fields don't puddle. That's an absolute fact, and every contractor I've talked to that installs these, they don't puddle.
Didn't we have the county meet with Doug? Didn't we have the county come down to discuss this already?
No, they haven't come since we asked.
No, I meant that at the field.
Yeah. Oh, you did,
Go ahead,
okay.
Doug.
Yeah, go ahead.
And they had been to the field a couple times after it rained. They visited unannounced, they went on their own.
Right.
Cheryl's got a video of after the last rain, comparing our turf field to the high school turf field, so we should.
Those are the videos I provided.
We should probably get a copy of that to the council.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, and I appreciate what you're saying, Steve, and I know there's issues about that, and that's why I formed the Field Study
Yeah.
Committee, because we really want to get more into depth with that, and I know John has gotten some documents from the county, so we'll work on that.
It's not gonna be easy, it's not gonna be pretty, because
No.
you're gonna have to call the county out. And they're gonna have, eventually you're gonna have to sit down and say like, yes, we gave $385,000, you put up the bulk of it, but, we have a subpar product, and you control the engineering, which most counties don't design fields every day, they should have got a third-party engineer to do it, but you control the testing, you contracted the contractor, lowest bid, so, it's not gonna be easy, it's not gonna be pretty, but it's something that I think, we've gotta do.
Yeah, and I think we're prepared to address it once we have all the data and we really have, good information, solid data, I think as Tom mentioned, and, what Doug has, and we'll get into depth with it and form a strategy for how we proceed with this.
But, my question was, so it's charging across the board, any team that uses it in town, out of town? Okay.
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
all righty, thanks.
I think something else that was discussed in our last Public Works meeting, which is relevant as well, is they came forward with data on rainfall for this past year. I think, don't remember the percentage increase, but it was a double-digit percent increase from the prior year, and in the history of 130 years of data that was kept and presented by the Public Works Committee, it was the second highest amount of rainfall in 130 years. The next highest, I think, was 2010 or 11. But it was a substantial amount of rain that we received in the 2018 calendar year, according to the data. So we just need, in the context of the concerns, anywhere where the field is subpar, it doesn't meet the design specifications, we need to identify that with empirical data. We need to address it with the county. I agree 100%. If a field is subpar in some way, as defined by empirical measurements and data, we need to address it. I'm supportive of that. But I think we have to make sure that we have the information to show where the field is deficient. There was data that was provided to us. I think we should publish on the website showing the dimensions of the field as compared to the, what was it, Doug, the New Jersey
State Standards.
New Jersey State Standards. We should publish that on our website so that that's clear what the measurements of our field are and what the New Jersey State Standards are. The concern about drainage, we need to investigate that fully and make sure that the field is appropriate. And then if there's other concerns, then we need to address them on a case-by-case basis.
Well, I think the starting point is just
The field measurement information that you're talking about was provided to all the council members.
Right, I'm thinking that maybe we should publish it on the website so that people can see as well.
Did you have it surveyed?
I'm sorry?
Did you have it surveyed?
It was measured out, the Neil went out, John.
Okay, because I actually had it surveyed with a GPS unit last week, and I have all the information. It's actually closer than what I originally thought for the width of the soccer field. I thought it was 175 feet all the times I had wheeled it off, but it's supposed to be 180. It's actually 179.4 or something like that. It's pretty close. And it is 360 feet long for the football from end to end. So I had it surveyed last week.
John, did you have a
Yeah, as far as
comment?
the drainage
That's
goes.
true, Steve. Can you provide the data to the borough so that we have the information that you're referring to? Yeah.
With all the rainfall that we had, there weren't any complaints about the high school field, though.
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, we just get two fields, same rainfall,
I was just gonna
two
say,
different
same
results.
town,
I mean,
same
there's something's
rainfall.
not working.
Thank God we have that field in town to use a comparison to, because you have the exact same applications, you have the exact same weather pattern, you have everything, in a controlled environment, and like I said, the videos I'm happy to provide. I don't know if you saw them, but I mean, it's drastic. It's amazing how it's bone dry and puddles. It's astounding.
Okay.
I
Thank
think
you, Steve.
If we have to also just assume that in that scenario is that the field is at the high school is operating properly. that there's not some other deficiency at the high
Well,
school.
it's dry, so it's, I mean,
Well, yeah, but that's not the only criteria for.
Well, I think you also
turf
have to
field.
compare the types of materials that we were using
Yeah.
at that point, how much cushioning there is and all that.
Yes,
But
that's what I'm
that's the
saying.
data we need to collect,
Yes, so.
as opposed to what ours is.
Right.
I thought you should,
But there still should be puddling. It
yeah,
doesn't,
correct.
what do you mean, I'm sorry, what do you mean deficiencies with the high school field?
I'm just saying that, the assumption is that there may be a difference in the way that they're operating, but it doesn't mean that there's a deficiency, there's a difference.
Well, it shouldn't be
Then-
puddling, I mean, it's,
Again,
there is a deficiency.
I think
There's
what I heard
puddling.
from our borough employee was that they did a comparison that you were not seeing puddling. Is that correct, or am I misinterpreting what you
Yeah,
said?
Cheryl went down after the rain, Cheryl and me went down and they took a video, and then they went over to the high school field, and you can see the puddling, the ponding on some of the areas of the high school field, but we didn't have it on our field.
So it sounds like there's
Yeah.
differing data out here. We just
Yeah.
make sure that we get what's empirically correct about all of them before we draw a conclusion.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that the conclusion, that some of the statements made could be completely accurate, but let's get all the data behind it and make an informed decision based on data.
And I think you're right, it isn't all so much comparing the middle school or high school, it's comparing the job that was done against what the specs they were given.
Right,
Did they
yeah.
meet that?
It could be different
And
specs, different
unfortunately,
material.
we didn't create those, so we may be held hostage to that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the comparator.
Okay, so we'll talk some more tomorrow night at the Fields meeting, and we'll see if we can get more. And Steve, anything you have to share, please,
right, yeah.
please do so. And thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else from the public like to be heard? Okay.
I have a question. A resident had tried to make it to public meeting but couldn't. So she emailed me and it's related to the fields. But you just mentioned that you guys are meeting tomorrow about fields. So
Yeah.
maybe I can have her come to that.
Why don't you forward me the email and I'll
Okay.
contact her?
Okay, perfect.
That'd be great.
Is that at the recreation committee, the regularly scheduled recreation committee, or is this a separate?
No, this is my ad hoc committee that I've
So there are going to be two
created.
meetings separately?
Yeah, we're going to be in here. I think recreation's in the other, over there. Okay. Items of business. We have ordinances from the last meeting that were introduced, and these are now for public hearing. So we will open the public hearing on ordinance 2019-1790, an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. Any comments from the public on this ordinance? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. So now I need a motion to pass on final reading and adopt as published.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Ms. Greenfield?
No.
Mr. Hannah?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
No.
Ms. Amer?
Yes.
Okay, now we will open the public hearing on ordinance 2019-1791, amending the standards for issuance of construction records clearance certificate and supplementing and amending Chapter 12 of the Borough Code entitled Building and Housing. Anyone from the public wish to be heard on this? And this was, if people wanted it more, with less than 10 days, was that what this is for?
No, this
No?
is just the one that adds the requirement to get a zoning clearance certificate as part of this process.
Oh, it's the whole process when you're, yeah, the
We're discussing
checklist.
later the-
That's fine with business.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, it kind of
Okay.
follows with what the board's recommended, getting
Right.
things into zoning compliance, so it helps in that effort.
Yeah. Okay. No one from the public, we'll close the public hearing. Can I have a motion to pass on final reading and adopt as published?
Motion.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Ms. Amer?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Okay, we'll now open the public hearing on ordinance 2019-1793, banning certain sump pump discharges into borough streets and supplementing and amending Chapter 14 of the Borough Code entitled Police Regulations.
Mayor, I'd ask that the council amend this ordinance by motion in section 3-21.1, the purpose at the last clause, create, where it says unsafe icing conditions, change it to unsafe conditions such as icing and flooding to make it consistent with the next section.
Is that in our copy or not?
It is not. The chief just brought it to my attention this evening. If you look at 321.1 at the end, it says, well, the purpose of this ordinance subsection is to prohibit the discharge of sump pump or other intentional discharge of any stormwater onto any borough street or sidewalk when such discharge
unsafe
create
icing.
icing conditions. I'm just suggesting that we amend that to read unsafe conditions such as icing or flooding.
Right.
And that
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that is how it's marked up here, isn't it?
Yeah.
It says unsafe.
This section is marked up, but this section would also need to be marked up.
Say
Yes.
unsafe. Oh, I see. So you've got
It's all
conditions
important.
such as icing and
That way it's
flooding.
Yeah.
internally
So
And
it's
on the purpose
consistent.
section, so
Got
that
it.
It could be amended and adopted this evening because it's not making substantive change.
Okay. But first, the public hearing, yes?
Well, then you can do the motion and then open the public hearing on the ordinance as amended.
So as amended, all right,
So
so
I move to make the amendment as recommended by our borough attorney.
Second.
Maybe do a voice vote on the amendment.
on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
now we do the public hearing.
Yes.
Okay. Any comments from the public on ordinance 2019-1793 as amended? All right, we will close the public hearing.
I'll move.
Well, we have to have the motion. I just had a question for clarity, but do we first move and second it, or how do we do
No,
that?
well, no,
have
question,
to.
you have a question first.
Yeah, so just, I'm not opposed to the idea, but I just want to make sure we understand it. Section 3-21.1 under the purpose talks about the intentional discharge, and 30-21.2 talks about the discharge being directly onto the street or sidewalk. So do I understand this correctly, that if it was unintentional, somehow we had such a rainstorms that the system that was in place was overwhelmed and it ended up being on the sidewalk or street, is the homeowner still liable?
It would depend, I think section 2 is actually this positive section. But it means, by intentional, it means that you put a pipe.
That's right.
something
Directly out.
on the street as
That's
opposed
right.
to just surface waters.
Which is,
Okay, I just want to make sure we all
Yeah.
understand there, okay?
Yeah, that's what
Because the
we're
word
trying to
intentional
prevent.
appeared in one paragraph but not in the other, and the word directly appeared in one paragraph but not the other. And I just want to make sure we're all clear.
Yep, thank you.
Okay,
I'll move.
Second.
okay, roll call vote.
Mr. Gotti?
Yes?
Ms. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, and now we will open the public hearing on ordinance 2019-1794, an ordinance increasing the number of members of the Borough Historic Preservation Advisory Committee and supplementing and amending Chapter 2 of the Bernardsville Code entitled Administration. And this was adding the extra person who's already been involved, so it's adding one more member that's eligible for.
I actually put a range in case you want to add somebody later, because it's in the.
Okay, good. Oh, so if somebody else.
Amend the ordinance.
All right, great.
In the future.
Okay, so anyone from the public would like to be heard on that ordinance? I'll close the public hearing. Do you have a motion to pass on final reading and adopt as published?
Motion.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Gotti?
Yes?
Okay, now we will open the public hearing on ordinance 2019-1795, establishing speed limits on Anderson Hill Road and Mount Harmony Road, and supplementing and amending chapters 7 of the Borough Code entitled Traffic. Anyone from the public want to be heard on this? And I believe we're making it 25 miles an hour?
Yep.
Where is it now?
35?
On Anderson Hill?
It's Anderson Hill and Mount Harmony.
North of Senior Drive is 35 miles an hour. We're reducing it to 25 up to Sycamore Hill, so it'll cover the hill.
So up that curve and around, yeah. That's good. Any other comments? Close the public hearing. Can I have a motion to pass on final reading and adopt as published?
I'll move.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Donahue?
Yes?
Ms. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mrs. Amer?
Yep.
Okay, we will now open the public hearing on ordinance 2019-1796 concerning sewer connection fees and sewer user rates and allocation and amending Chapter 16 of the Borough Code entitled Sewer Regulations. Anyone from the public want to be heard on this? And we are raising the amount from $305 to $330. No comments from the public. I'll close the public hearing. Motion to pass on final reading and
I
adopt.
just had a question about this then.
Yeah?
So that looks like a roughly 8% increase. Is this a request for the increase in the fees because we have increased expenses commensurate to that? Or is there some other reason we're raising the fees?
We have the new screening system put in, supplementary pumps that were installed, so it is for recouping the fees for the most part, yes.
Also, it's not 8% on your total bill, it's 8% on the connection fee, which makes up a portion of your bill, and then your usage per unit is not going up at all, it's staying flat from prior year. So the actual total increase in your bill is going to be dependent on how much you use, but it'd be much smaller than 8%.
Okay, maybe I misread it when it said the annual user fee for connection.
The connection amount is what's changing. The usage fee is, item B is
It's a facility fee, it says.
is the $465 for each
connection.
component, that's actually the amount of water you're using.
Okay.
That's not going up at all. So
Okay.
the total increase is smaller. It would depend on what your bill is actually, what your usage is before you can't calculate it for everybody because
It's
it depends
based on
your
water
usage.
use, right. Okay, motion to pass on final reading and adopt as published.
Motion.
Second,
Roll call?
Mrs. Amer?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Okay, resolutions, do we have any on this list from 1934 to 1946 that anybody wants to do separately?
I did have a question, just sort of maybe perhaps for background on the 1936, the accepting the grant for the sub-grant
For the emergency management?
So is this to recoup expenses from 2018, or is this to prepare for 2019?
This is.
Because the actual grant wasn't attached, so what were we asking for?
There was some backup material about the grant, I think it was provided, I will bring it to your package. Basically what it is, it's a performance grant. It's something that we've been doing every year through the State Office of Emergency Management. We get funding if we participate in some of their preparedness activies. They set down the guidelines for us to participate in the program. If we successfully get accepted into the program and then we meet the conditions of the program, we basically get $10,000. It's a grant really that is designed to reimburse us for the salary, specifically me in this grant, to reimburse the borough for the cost of my time working on these performance initiatives. So we get $10,000 back that we appropriate back into typically emergency management use for equipment and facilities and things like that that we need. So it's not anything that, even though there's a cash match involved, the match is in time working on the initiative. And it's really an incentive for us to do more in the way of preparedness, working with the county and the state to meet some of their identified goals.
So it wasn't intended to fund this rescue task force that's also a
No,
resolution later on?
That's separate, yeah.
The 2018 Emergency Management Assistance Grant is different than the Rescue Task Force grant. That is a grant that was obtained by the county that has nothing to do with the 2018 EMAA that you're authorizing us to sign some forms accepting
Gotcha.
the
Okay.
Yeah, there was the whole 20-page contract or something attached there with all the details on it.
It's the third year in a row.
Yeah. Okay, any other items that,
Yeah, I had an item talking about permitting the use of the borough property at Claremont Field parking lot for the improvement on the slope section. So in the request, they mentioned 3 months, plus or minus, is the time frame that they would need to use the space. In the backup material, they talked about this being not the first time that we've done something like this for these types of projects, so it makes, it seems to make sense. But the resolution itself doesn't mention the time frame, so it kind of like leaves it open-ended. Do we need to say something in the resolution where it's basically provide them for 3 months approval, and if they have to go over that, they would ask for additional time from us?
I would add that.
Yeah.
I didn't prepare the resolution.
Yeah, can we make that change and then vote on this?
Yes.
With the change?
Yes.
Is this discussion enough, or do we have to like do that?
I think as long as everybody agrees to it, you can make
Are
the
we-
change, and then
yeah.
when you do the consent agenda vote, it will be as
Okay,
revised.
so I propose that, you know, part of this resolution, we mention that they have
Yes.
3 months of usage there, after which time they have to come back to the council, ask for an extension if they need it.
do we know what 3 months they're talking about? They didn't mention when they were starting on it.
I think we could say in the resolution 3 months from start of project or something like that, would that be
Yeah, that sounds,
a good
Fair.
way to write it?
Yes.
everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else have? So we'll amend that,
Yes.
okay. 3 months from start of project. Okay, did you want to talk about the rescue task force?
I can give you some background on it before you vote, that would be fine, I'll stand up. So one of the, two of the items before you on your resolutions list have to do with the creation of a rescue task force. The rescue task force is an emergency response procedure that is taking place across the country, and specifically in Somerset County. We've been working on it for well over a year now to try to put in place in Somerset County. Specifically what it is, it's an integration of emergency response resources, police, fire, and EMS, to work together in response to terrorist acts and in particular active shooter situations. And the task force is designed to integrate fire and EMS resources into a law enforcement response to an active shooter situation. So there have to be guidelines in place, there have to be procedures in place, there has to be training in place, and by creating a rescue task force, all of these conditions will be met, and it will enhance our ability to go and basically provide patient care during an active shooter or terrorist act, and get people medical care quicker and more efficiently than used to happen under some of the old response models. The old model used to be in going to get the shooter, going and take out the threat. Now, you know, through experience and some of the things that have happened across the country and throughout the world, we've seen that there are things that can be done that will save lives and impact, you know, the effect, the long-term effect that we have on people who are victims of these types of crimes. So what's happened in Somerset County is they have a grant that they've obtained from the federal government to be able to buy equipment and provide some training for a rescue task force. And they want to share this grant throughout the county. It's a start, it's seed money, and it's the way to get going. It's not going to fund the entire program. But what the county did is they asked municipalities who want to be involved in it to participate. If they would meet certain conditions, they would be accepted into the program. And our police department is interested, our fire department and EMS crew, we're all interested in doing this. We think that it's beneficial to not only Burnsville, but through structuring a mutual aid system throughout Somerset County, we can call on our neighbors who will have trained resources to come in and deal with those types of situations. So in order for the county to get the grants, they're asking for a resolution of support, and they're asking that an MOU be signed between the police and fire department. Burnsville's in somewhat of a little easier situation here in that we have one fire company that contains the first aid squad, and borough entities, police, DPW, OEM is all under the auspice of the borough. Some municipalities have multiple private fire companies, multiple first aid squads, and different entities that all have to work together. So that's why the county wants this MOU, to see if there is support throughout the municipality to enter, to carry on a program like this. So for us, it's relatively easy because the fire department provides us with fire and EMS services, and they're willing to sign on board with this.
Great.
So it's really a formality, this MOU that we have to sign, and then it's another formality in the resolution naming the members to the rescue task force in the same way that we name other OEM resources, our shelter team, our OEM volunteers. Annually, at the beginning of the year, we'll include the rescue
Reappoint
task
them.
force members list on the
The
resolution.
appointments, yeah. Okay,
Thanks, Chief.
great, thank you, that was helpful. All right, so can we do them as a consent agenda? So would somebody move resolutions 1934 to 1946?
Second.
Okay, is a roll call?
Yes.
Okay,
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Ms. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
okay. Now we kind of go to points of discussion here. We have fleet inventory. We have somebody, anybody, Rosalie, or would like to
Well, did you all see?
detail it? Yes, we did, we do have a copy of
All
the
right.
report.
Basically, what we need is someone in one of the borough departments, like road department or something, to update the fleet inventory.
Okay,
And once it's done, have them email it to Bob. Everything's explained here and copies of the old fleet inventory. But we need it for the green team for Sustainable Jersey, but also it's a good measurement for you all to see
yeah,
what kind of savings you're getting as far as fuel and, I don't know, pollution and whatever else. You know, you can say green if you.
green, we like
You're
green,
more
yes.
efficient, and it looks like from 2011 to 2017,
There
our
was a-
carbon footprint dropped by
Yeah.
almost 25%.
Yeah, that was impressive.
And, yeah, and partly, mostly probably because there were more fuel-efficient trucks and things
Right.
like that. However, the fleet did increase in size, so what we need to know is how many, what your inventory is now, whether you got rid of stuff or, you know, and then, but basically, everything's in the packet.
Yeah.
So if you want to put it towards Public Works and see if you can assign somebody to,
Update, when do you need it by?
Said May, I think.
yeah, May 1st,
Okay.
if possible. Yeah.
All right,
Should we ask
But that would be great, and then you can just forward it to Bob.
if they have one.
Sorry.
And, Ed, you want to add anything?
It's fine.
It's a lot of really good information. I mean, it's a pretty in-depth report that you put together for them.
Yeah, well, Sustainable Jersey makes you jump through an awful lot
Yeah.
of hoops, and sometimes it seems ridiculous, but, you know, we are making progress in town, and it's wonderful that you all are embracing the idea, so, of just general environmental awareness, so it's good.
So this is to go to Bob for the green team?
Yeah, on the green team, and I assume that he gave his,
We know how to find Bob.
you know where to find him. Doesn't look like he gave his email. Come on, Bob.
It's
I
here,
had a question. I mean, the reduction in emissions and fuel costs are really commendable. I was just curious, and maybe Ralph or Doug or somebody else could answer this. Has there been an associated decrease in maintenance costs as well with this upgrade of the fleet? Because when you look at our expenses, we spend an awful lot maintaining these vehicles.
Yes, we do. I do not believe so, no. We do spend a good amount of money maintaining them.
Well, we have a good mechanic.
We do. So I'm sorry, Chief, you know, your cars have to idle a lot when they're out front. Is there any bypass, you know, you can plug them in versus let the engine run, say the wear and tear on the engine, but, you know, they still get the radios up and running? Is that, A, does it exist, and B, would it make sense? I don't know the answer, I just.
When the vehicles are in service, they really need to be idling. There are electronics inside the vehicle that have significant battery drains on the vehicles that we have a lot of dead batteries out there in the mornings when cars sit overnight. Sometimes even though everything's powered down and turned off, A lot of the new electronics are still drawing energy from some of the cars. A lot of our cars are older. The batteries are older, and they don't stand up well to the constant drains on the battery. The other problem that we have is the computer systems that we're integrated with through the MDTs in the cars all have separate logons. And every time the computer is turned off or powered down, we need to log on to every single system to get access to data in our vehicles. So the officers who are in and out of the cars all day long are logging in, logging off, logging in, logging off. It's just not practical, and it's not feasible at all. The other problem is when the vehicles are out here, the mobile video cameras that we use have an automatic download to a server in headquarters, and they're actually transmitting data back to the server. When they're in there, they're transmitting all the video data and the audio data that's stored on the units in the car. So the minute they pull into the police department, they're automatically, the computers are actually gearing up and they're transmitting information back. When they're not on, there's no information that's being transferred, and then the data becomes backlogged inside the computers, and it renders the cameras inoperable in the cars. So we have to constantly be downloading data to the server as we move in. So there's a multitude of reasons as to why the vehicles have to run when they're in service. Obviously, when we know a vehicle is going to be parked or taken out of service for an extended period of time, it's turned off. All right, but most of the time when people see the cars idle, first of all, they are locked, they're secure. But they do have to idle to power the systems that are inside the cars. So if we want to be able to operate and do the job that we have to do, we have to have the equipment that's operable inside the vehicles to do it. The most important thing is our communication system. All of our portable radio systems operate off of repeaters that are in the cars. When the radios are off, computers don't work, we have the portable radio communications. So that's just the way the system is designed. We have significant communications challenges in this town with the topography and the tree cover and our location to various repeater towers that there basically are none in this area that our radio system can use. So we have to have repeaters in the vehicles to make our portable radios work. So there's a lot of equipment that is drawing off of the power that's in those cars.
Yeah, I know that. I guess my question was, if they're parked out here, I mean, if they're idling, does there like a bypass exist? They could draw the electrical they need from somewhere else and without the engine running?
I don't think that's as easily said. The electronics in those cars are pretty complex.
Okay.
And there's a lot of different systems. We do have some, over by the gas pump, there is an outlet where vehicles that sit for long periods of time, where, they can be plugged in so that the batteries can be charged, so that the batteries don't die. That's different than powering the vehicles for the use and sustaining all the electronics and the radios and everything that are in the cars. The other thing is too, we have areas in headquarters that have no radios and throughout the municipal building, so when the officers are here, the only radio they have is on their belt. If they're processing an arrest in the back room, they don't have a radio, they can't even hear the radio. And it's a basement, okay? So, we don't have radios wired into all the rooms because our walls are 3 feet thick of stone and concrete. So the only way the officers can hear their radios is if their repeaters are on to be able to hear the radio communications that are going on. If they need to be in headquarters for a while, they need the radio on for any reason for a period of time. So there's a lot. Look, we've wrestled with this for years and years and years and years. If there was a way that we could do better, we would. We have not been able to come up with a solution that's practical. The last thing we want to do is put extra wear and tear on our engines and have the cars running for no reason at all. It's not out of laziness, it's not out of disrespect for the environment. There's a reason we do for what we do. And this comes up every year, this question over and over and over again. And every year we look at it. And as technology evolves, maybe there will be a solution, but this technology is very expensive. If you're going to take an entire fleet and turn to some kind of green technology, it's going to cost you a lot of money to be able to do that, if it even exists. I don't know if it even exists to meet our purpose.
Okay, thanks.
So I just have one quick question then. Ralph, do we have somebody on your staff who can update the fleet inventory for the green team? Is there somebody you can assign to do that? So that
Redland did it the last couple of times.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that, so.
I don't know, that's within
Yeah, she probably could, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Since she's done it before, she probably, you know.
Yeah, it has the data right there. Yep, we
And
will,
from, like, police officer's side, because I understand completely what Chief Valentine is saying, I mean, the dump trucks don't have to idle, you know?
right, it's just the
Things like
police
that.
cars.
If they're parked someplace, you just turn them off. So.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Rosalie. All right, Ed, you're up.
Well, it's very brief. The farmers think that if they have a banner across 202, and they've been saying this for years, their business would, one farmer said it would increase 50%. Seems like a lot.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, I've been putting up A-frame signs around the town, and they've been happy with that. But last year, Bedminster had 2 banners, one across, you know, 2 different places, and so they really want a banner. And I think it's their 25th year of the market. I think it would be nice to have a banner across 202 if we could. So I put the paperwork in, we're going to get a design, and if you can approve it, I think we can move ahead. Anthony will probably help me get it done. It's apparently a lot of different forms have to be filled out. I
Yes.
think I was told it takes 4
Has
months.
to go to the
and I don't know
DOT.
if we're still willing to put it up, but apparently that's the way it gets done, I guess.
And
So
how
that's what
long
we're
would you,
trying to do.
how long would you have it up for the whole season?
3 weeks.
Oh, just 3
It's
weeks?
only allowed 3 weeks.
Okay, in the beginning of the, when you first open?
Beginning of June, and, you know, so that people know, and then.
Uh-huh.
it takes 2 weeks to come down.
Where's
I
the-
think Bedminster left it up the whole
Can you
season.
see the picture?
They did have it up the whole time.
What's the proposed location?
It's, here, I'll show you the
Yeah, I don't
picture.
know
Can you
exact
see the
piece,
picture?
Like $265.
It's
They
kind
add
of
up.
like
I
from
mean,
this
the bat's
pole
gonna
to that
probably
pole,
cost
so it's,
$500.
I think that's where
I'd
he's
be
saying.
surprised. You know, so it's not cheap.
I think that's a state requirement, because it's a state highway.
Hopefully the fire department will put it up, that's probably gonna save us a bundle.
I don't know, maybe it's our town
But
requirement.
other
Is that
than
us?
I have a company that Bedminster use,
Maybe 3 weeks.
That's a town.
That's the town. So the 3 weeks is our regulation, I'm sorry. in the
Actually,
meantime.
they did 2 weeks, though, which was taken. Probably they did 3 weeks if they wanted. I think the ordinance says 2 weeks, but I think. you
Why?
could do
Is there a reason for that?
I don't know.
Why couldn't it just be up for the whole season?
Yeah, I think so too.
I think it would get more people in there. I mean, I didn't know about the Bedminster.
If Bedminster left theirs up the whole season?
Yeah, it was up.
They did, it seemed to me they did.
For like 6 months though, is it?
Yes.
Well, I don't know, it was 6 months,
They're
but
not
it was
there.
a long time. It was there in the beginning,
It
and
was
it
there
was like,
all summer.
because they extended their season also. And I don't think they ever took
I
it
think the
down, but I
problem
didn't
is-
double check.
I think the problem is you can't single out this one event.
Oh, right, and then,
Change the ordinance, and I think one of the considerations was there are only so many locations, so you may preclude other people from having the banners. You know, but you can change the ordinance for something after the.
Can you do it more than once? In other words, we have the banner, we paid for the banner, and we want to promote the 25th anniversary. Could you have it 3 weeks at the beginning of the season? And then towards the end of the season, remind people that it's ending in November, whatever date, and have the start and
back
end date
up
on your
again?
banner?
Well, the Apple Festival and the Peach Festival are, you know, big draws for the farmer's market. It could be put up again, but taking it down and putting it up is probably the hardest part.
yeah,
I don't
and
understand
it's
why we just
volunteers
take it
doing that, right?
I mean, is it really that big? Do we have that many people that ask to put banners across the road?
I don't know. Have we had other people that have asked for banners? Do you know any other organizations that have asked to put a banner up? Do we have any
But
history
maybe
of?
putting banner up is a good thing, because it'll get people involved in things.
We did, for a period of time, have various organizations come and want to put banners up for a lot of different things. And I think most of them were held up because of the state regulations.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to get the state
Getting manpower
approval.
to put them up. If they want to pay to have a private contractor come in with a truck to do it, you know, you got a utility pole, you've got electrical lines, you've got communications lines. It's not, you know, it's not like there's dedicated poles in place for hanging banners, which would make it much easier. You know, normally we have to bring in a ladder truck. Our fire department doesn't have the ladders to do that. And depending what poles are, what the height of the banner is, we don't have the trucks with the bucket trucks that are going to be high enough and hold enough people to be able to string it. So it's a bit of a process. I mean, it's good. It's good publicity for the program.
Yeah.
To to do it, you know, for something like the farmer's market, I mean, I think that's a great idea. But to answer your question, when the banner goes up, it sparks a lot of other ideas, and people who have various different events will want to put banners up as well.
That was the reason I was, in the past, that was kind of how I was talked out of it, even though a farmer's market.
Right, but they would want to put banners up for perhaps one-off events, not something that's going to last 6 months. So I think the issue isn't necessarily
You
putting a
never
banner
know.
up.
I just was answering the question.
fees.
I
Yeah.
was asking if we had people, we have over the years had multiple people. for-
Steve, did you have a
I'm
comment?
just curious, is it people that want to advertise just on the two to a corridor, or is it people advertising to do events in town? So is it someone that's just trying to get advertisement for a banner because it's a heavily trafficked road, or is it people that are
It's in town, they've all been in town, it's all been community-based events, it hasn't been somebody advertising for something outside the community that I'm aware of, if that's what.
202 is the only place the ordinance allows the banners. It says only one special event banner shall be allowed at any one time. So two groups can't have them at the same time.
Right.
And it is 3 weeks.
Oh, it says 3 weeks. Does it specify what kinds of, like whether it's a profit or not-for-profit or?
It does say special event. It just prohibits banners in connection with fund appeals, political activities, or advertising of any type.
Oh, okay, so that's, yeah.
So maybe you put it up all season, if someone wants to put a banner up in that time frame, then you take it down and let the other people put up their banner if anyone's actually gonna do that. I think you should leave it up all season.
I think we should.
I don't see the downside to it. It's ridiculous to even discuss it more. Leave it up. I mean, really, is it really that big a deal?
No. So do
I
it,
think unless you're going to change the ordinance, you're going to have to make it, Mr. Reynolds suggested, if somebody else comes in.
Right.
The 3-week period, then.
but because the ordinance says 3 weeks, do we have to do anything,
No,
just to prove that this one can stay up all?
just not enforce the ordinance until somebody else comes in and wants to put a banner up.
I don't foresee it happening.
Okay.
It hasn't happened before, so
Yeah.
for the sake of doing it, let's just leave it up.
So do we need a resolution to do that? To approve it for
I do a motion.
a motion? So do I have a motion to allow the
Motion.
farmer's market to do,
I
For the
mean,
season.
on my behalf, I would say that I don't think the farmers are gonna want it every year. This is the 25th anniversary. I think that's a good rationale to do
Yeah.
it for them.
will it say that on the banner? Will you mention
No,
it's the
I
20?
think that's too much writing. I think
Okay.
that I have to check that out, but you have to keep it simple because you don't want to cause a crash. It's
Right,
like
people are
reading
trying
the
to,
banner. So,
So are you going
Yeah.
to have the start and end date on it?
yeah, well, yes, that's about it. The farmer's market start and end day.
okay. So we had a motion and a second?
Yes.
Can we just do a voice vote on that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you, Ed. All right. We are at 6E, we're amending Resolution 18252 entitled,
Actually, can we just ask, what are the dates of the farmer's market, just so we know? Or have you pegged them already? Ed,
I'm sorry.
do you know the dates of the farmer's market already?
Yeah, June 8th it starts.
June 8th.
Thank you.
okay? All right, so we're at 6E, amending Resolution 18252 entitled Establishing Decal Fees and Other Regulations for Municipal Parking Lots During 2019 by increasing the hourly rate at railroad station parking lot. And I believe the Finance Committee had an amendment to that, so Tom, you want to explain
So,
your idea?
it was brought to the attention of the Finance Committee that the rate which was proposed in this resolution, which is going from 25 cents an hour, which is, I think, historically quite an old rate, 50 cents an hour would barely cover the costs of even just administering the hardware, paying the fees to the companies that manage the payment scheme and the collection fees, that kind of thing. It was suggested during the Finance Committee meeting and discussed during the Finance Committee meeting that we would raise it to 25 cents for 15 minutes. And that we would have a $1 minimum for anybody using electronic transfer payment, because the electronic transfers
Has a fee.
have additional fees that you don't get if somebody just puts coins into the meter. So you could pay for 25 cents using a quarter, or you could pay for 50 cents for 30 minutes using 2 quarters. But if you wanted to use an electronic payment form, you'd have to pay at least $1, and you would get an hour. of time, and if you paid more, $1.25 or $1.75 or $3, you would get more time for the amount that you paid. We would make that change to this resolution and pass the resolution if everybody else agrees. I believe it was a unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee that we go to 25 cents for every 15 minutes and a $1 minimum for any electronic transfer and any electronic transactions for
good.
parking.
Yes, sound good? I have a question on the kiosk, how it works. So when you pull in, you go over to the machine and you put in what parking spot you parked in. And then you swipe your card if you're charging it. And then when you're ready to leave, you swipe it again and then it calculates how long you were there? Or what do you do?
No, you have to pay up front. So if you think you're gonna be there for 8 hours, you pay 8 hours.
You pay 8 hours.
Yes.
And then you get put a receipt in on your dashboard.
No, it registers in the kiosk, what spots are paid for.
They're numbered.
So you don't have to come back to the car, you just, once you do that, you just go and you're done.
How,
Also
Okay.
having it so you can do the app on your phone, so if you run, jump on the train,
You can just,
get to your spot, as long as you know where your spot is.
oh, you can actually just do it on your phone if you're late for the train. Cool.
And also, Doug, like if you're at a restaurant and you go past your time, you can add time on your phone app as well. As long as you download the app to your phone, you could also add time to the car that's already been parked.
Correct.
If you parked and paid for 2 hours, now you want a third
Yeah.
hour, you can pay for another hour.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Can the kiosk require the dollar minimum for an electronic payment?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think you can program it that way.
But you could put a quarter in and park for 15 minutes if you want. That's
Yeah.
what way we're gonna write this.
Because usually if somebody's just picking somebody up or dropping, running in for something, you could just throw a quarter.
Right, when it sees the credit card, it'll be
Right of the,
hour minimum.
if you're looking at the train station, it's to the right. There's 49 spaces, right? Yeah,
oh, okay.
yeah, so.
Okay, good.
All right, so are we all good with that?
Yes.
Can we have a motion with the amended?
So I move to
Prices?
pass as amended.
Second.
We do a all voice vote on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good, okay. Next is correspondence. We had an email from Jeff Price asking for a fee modification on ordinance 181757. I think what they're finding is there's normally, for a CRC, what is that? It's a $35 fee and it's done within 10 business days. What they're finding is a lot of people need them sooner, which requires extra time and effort on the part of the staff. So what they're proposing is that if you wanted less than a 10-day turnaround, it would be a $75 fee for the extra time. So that's, can we do that for next week to have
Yes,
the ordinance amended? Does anybody have questions or problems with that?
Nope.
Okay.
I just have one clarifying point. Is it 35 if you want it on the regular time frame, and then it's 75 if you want a rush? Or is it 35 plus 75 for the rush? Like, is it 110?
No, it's $50 for the, I think what he's saying, the fee for the that's the other part of it.
What was discussed at the committee meeting where this was proposed, is it would be 35 or 75.
Or
It's
75.
not,
Okay.
it's not
Yeah.
additive.
It's not an extra
So we'll just
75.
make sure it says that in the ordinance.
Stream cleanup. Christine, you want to talk about that?
Yep, on April 13th, the Raritan Headwaters Stream Cleanup will be in town. I'm the coordinator. The location is still, it depends on how many people volunteer, but usually we try to spread it out among as many locations as we can. So the main meetup we did last year, and it worked out great, is at this Borough Pond. And anyone who would like to sign up, do so before March 1st if you want a free t-shirt. Otherwise,
and gloves.
if I don't like you, I won't give you a t-shirt. No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot of extra t-shirts, so you might not get the size you want. We always have gloves and bags, and this is a perfect opportunity to get your Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or friends and family and neighbors out to clean up town. And a lot of people ask, well, do I have to go in the stream? And the answer is no, because the goal is to keep the litter out of the stream, so we clean up around the stream. Some kids do like to go in the stream, but it's not a requirement. So keep that in mind if you're worried about getting wet. Again, it's April 13th. It's 9 to 12. We'll take any and all volunteers. It's very safe and fun for all ages, and the website is raritanheadwaters.org/stream cleanup. And you can email me if you have any questions, or register right on your website.
And I think do we have something on our website about it? I believe we do, don't we?
Oh, they're asking to put it on our website.
Okay, yeah, I think we've done that in the past.
Yeah, we do it
Yeah.
every year. So you're okay with having that on our website? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we did it last year too, so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, third-party website linking to Quimby Village RFP. This was, I guess, Anthony got an email from Brownfield, which is a company that helps promote projects going on to developers. So they were asking if they could link to our RFP so they could share it with their contractors or people that might be interested. The other ones that we got had fees, I believe, because Anthony and I looked at them today, and we weren't very confident with those two, but Brownfield we felt was a good outlet to get more people interested in the project. So I think what they want to do is, I'm not sure how they're going to connect it. Did they say how they wanted to do it?
I think they just want to put a link on their website to
Saying to our RFP.
on our website.
Yeah. So it's just like a cross post, so you've got from their site. Anybody have a
It's kind of confusing.
problem with that? Yeah, the other stuff is,
There was information about the one that costs money to advertise on.
Oh, it's
but
on
Yeah.
his email.
but then
yeah, it was a
they're
confusing
saying
email.
Okay.
That the committee, the redevelopment committee for that site that's working on Quimby Lane said that we should do the brownfields.
Yeah.
There's no cost to advertise on this, right?
No,
There's no
they
cost
get
for us.
advertising from the people, the contractors, not from the
Yeah.
people offering the RFPs. So that one is free. The others we kind of nixed because there were various fees. They're more of real estate companies, but Brownfield was more of the right industry. So if everyone's okay with that, with us letting them share our link, we're good with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question, if that's okay. The RFP, I think the original date was they were looking for them by April 1st. Is that still what is on the website? Does anybody know?
If it's still on the website.
Okay, because I always thought that 4 months, because it was in December when it was put on, that's that's a short amount of time to do due diligence, to be able to put in a proposal for something. I just thought that was a tight gap. I don't know if you guys have talked about increasing that, because 4 months is not a lot to put together a major development.
Well, yeah, I know Anthony just sent out an email to the people that originally we sent it to or sent it out to, asking if they had questions or any issues with it. So if there are people who are interested, maybe they'll say, it's not enough time, and then we'll extend it. So maybe we'll get some response to that.
I also noted that in the materials that were supplied to us, the supporting email said that, and I would agree with Mr. Reynolds, it seems like it's kind of a short turnaround, 4 months. Rather than that. But at the same time, the information in the email said that it actually was like a long lead time. So I don't know if the companies that might be interested in something like this are prepared to turn things around on a fairly fast basis or not. But that seemed to be the implication in the email supporting material that I read. So, maybe we just need to check and make sure that if there's people who want additional time, that we perhaps consider whether or not we want to do something. But if they're comfortable with the amount of time, which I don't know that they are, but if they are, then, we could maybe stick with our current schedule.
Well, yeah, I think we'll see if we get any response.
Let's see what kind of feedback we get,
Yeah.
I'm not against the idea of extending the deadline, but obviously if people are willing to comply with it,
Oh, yeah.
even better, you know?
If there's no request for an extension,
Right.
there's no reason to extend it.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. The next thing, this was a mayor's conference I went to in Trenton, which was a legislative briefing on the proposed marijuana legislation that I thought was really interesting and I gave you the copies of the PowerPoint presentations, and I think what's interesting, I know some municipalities have already passed ordinances saying they're not going to participate, which what they're saying now is those will be null and void. You have to do the ordinance after it's legalized. And then you've got, I think it's 12 to 18 months to decide whether you're opting in or opting out. And then you'd have to do an ordinance saying what you want to do. It's still, it hasn't
Excuse me,
gone
Mayor?
yeah.
I believe it said 180 days, is that what it said? Not 12 to
Oh,
18 months.
I'm sorry,
180
12
days.
yeah,
It'd be
no.
only 6 months we'd have, after which,
Well, it said to be implemented over 12 to 18 months.
but we would have to pass an
180
ordinance within
days.
180 days.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's by default allowed.
Yes,
Yeah.
then it's an opt-in. There's 4 different licenses, and you could opt for any or all of them. It's a grower, a processor, wholesaler, or retailer. So each of those are separate licenses, and the borough could decide they only want growers, or you only want retail, or you don't want any of them. There is an oversight commission. There's still a point of argument as to where it's going to sit, if it's going to be under the Department of Treasury or not. There's definitions in here of what the different businesses are. There will be a 12% state tax on the products sold, which includes the prevailing sales tax. And then the municipality can charge a 2% tax that stays in the municipality. That's it. And we don't know how long it'll stay in the municipality, but they're saying it could stay. You cannot have a grower on any property that's assessed farmland. So that's one of the things. I think what they're still debating, because right now they have the 12% state tax, I think Governor Murphy is pushing for a 25% state tax, so that's one of the issues I think that's still being debated. So I thought it was good information for us to know now, because besides, the 180 days deadline, and it's a 5-year time frame, so you can opt out of any of those or all of those, but then, and every 5 years after, you'd have to redo that if you opt in or opt out. Then it talked about the expungement laws that are tied to it for violations, marijuana violations. The other was about risk management, that regardless of whether we opt in or not, the things that we have to do internally in terms of redoing our, what do you call them, your personnel handbook, of all the rules and regulations of our zero tolerance policy, what they call safety sensitive positions, which would be, police, fire, EMS, crossing guards, anybody that's, snow plowing, using a chainsaw, anybody who could be impaired by using marijuana, have to all be specified how you're going to deal with those. So we have a lot of work to do, opting in or opting out, either way. There's a lot of risk management things that we'll be required to do, so.
Yeah, regardless of whether we opt in or opt out, we still need to have a safety
Yes,
policy.
as I said, because if it's legal and people are using it, how do you deal with your employees, on the job? So that's.
Same way you would deal with employees that come to work drunk.
Right, but you have, I don't know how our policy.
It stays in your system for up to.
Yes, that's the trouble. So you may
How
have
you can do it.
had smoked on the weekend and then get tested on Monday. So,
Well, that's the problem they're facing in Colorado. The police stop you, they can test for alcohol, but they can't test for marijuana.
well, evidently, there's Kevin, maybe I know they're supposedly developing some kind of test for marijuana.
I'm sure somebody's trying, I'm sure there's a race to develop it right now, and I think there's nothing out there right now for it.
Right.
Okay.
That can test actively, if you're actively using it or not.
Or to determine what
Testing
level
the
is in your
person's
system.
blood or urine, but
Yeah.
you don't know when it was ingested.
Right.
So even with employees, You can't hang a
Well,
Tesla.
I know, I mean, you just assume that they'd never use it, even though it's legal, you can't allow them at home to, so that's what I'm saying, there's a lot of issues that have to be worked out if this becomes legalized.
What did they-
Colorado is dealing with this right now. They're in the middle of a nightmare out there with, people with their accident rate on car accidents, things like that, trying to figure out who's sober, who's not.
What did they say about the expungement? Because I have a comment on that.
I think that's one of the, where it's getting held up is,
But see, at the time of that person's arrest, it was illegal.
right,
So then it's like saying that if you got a speeding ticket because the speed limit was 55, and then 3 weeks later they raised it to 75, you're not gonna take your ticket away. You
No.
broke the law at that point. Just because it's legal now doesn't,
but there's
it's not
a,
grandfathered in.
if you don't commit another crime within 10 years, you're eligible for expungement of just about any level of
All right,
certain
10
crimes.
years, but they're making it
that's what
sound
they're
like it's
arguing over.
retroactive the minute it becomes legal.
Yeah, I
It's,
think they're looking for less than a 10-year expungement, which is what it is now by standard.
Well, I think something that may be a little bit more germane to us is the amount of money that's coming to municipalities. So this was the Conference of Mayors. I did attend a couple workshops at the League of Municipalities meeting back in November, and the NJLM was asking for a lot more than 2%. And then historically, we do look at other states that have legalized
They
it.
get more than 2%.
In order to maintain the infrastructure that's necessary, and all the increased costs that accrue, it has to be about 5%.
So, anyway, that's what I have so far. Hopefully, they'll give us updates as we get closer, but I thought it was worth just mentioning. Because I know we talked about maybe doing an ordinance at this point, but it's not worth it.
I think it's ridiculous. It's the last thing we need in the state.
I would agree.
Yeah. Okay, Jack, you wanted
Mayor, could I?
pick, oh, yes?
We discussed doing an informal update from the finance committee. Do you want to do that?
We're gonna do that the next round. I mean, the next meeting, when we have committee reports
Okay.
on the 20, because Ralph had something he wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's an issue that came up on the budget, so.
Okay.
So again?
Hello, and we're not done, this is still a public meeting, and it's just Jack teaching us about municipal government, so you're welcome to stay and learn about municipal government. It's very interesting, honestly.
Scintillating.
Scintillating. I forget where we were on our agenda, we were,
Parliamentary procedures.
Yes, we were starting off there. Everyone talks about Robert's rules,
yes,
but if you read Robert's rules, it makes your hair hurt. And it often doesn't have much to do with municipal government. It's good for American Legion conventions and things.
right.
So what we did was in the administrative code, I borrowed from the School Boards Association, and they have a nice chart of
We
different
do,
things.
yeah. We did have
But
that.
as a practical matter, I don't think we've had parliamentary procedure questions more than 2 or 3 times, in 25 years. It's just, we're a small, informal body. But if questions do come up, that's where we go to the administrative code of that chart. And, it's happened 2 or 3 times, but usually, there's pretty much consensus on tabling or whatever. So,
Tabling or,
executive session. As you know, you need to adopt a resolution to go into executive session. Now, there was some confusion because the appellate division, back in 2011, I think it was, said that you had to specify which item you were going to discuss in executive session. And we try to do that, and I don't think it's a bad idea. Then the Supreme Court overturned that decision and said the appellate division was confusing the notice that's required. If you're having a special meeting, the things that are going to be discussed, you have to have everything that's known at the time the agenda is prepared. But the court, in a rare nod to practical things, said public bodies are often confronted with fluid, ongoing situations, and it is often difficult, if not impossible, to determine at a later juncture whether the public body provided as much knowledge as possible of the intended scope of discussions at a closed session. So as you know, closed sessions seem to go off on tangents. And I don't think it's a problem as long as it's something that can be discussed in closed session. those things, the usual ones are pending litigation, personnel, which I'll go back to, things like that. Purchase of property.
Right, purchase of property.
Sale of property is not covered because you have to do that by public bidding, so there's no reason to discuss that. Now, with respect to personnel, you've got to give an employee a race notice, it's called, if their performance is going to be discussed. But performance is pretty broadly defined, so anytime we're discussing an employee, we give a race notice. That race notice has to tell them that the time and date of the hearing, and also that they have the right to have the matter discussed in public if they request so in writing. I've only seen it happen once or twice. It makes no sense to me.
No, to have it in public.
It always blows up in their faces. You're just better off, in my opinion, but employees have that right.
And actually, it's named after a woman named Rice, in
Yes.
case you're wondering why it's called
I was
Rice.
wondering what the acronym was.
Yes, it's not an acronym. It was the original case was a woman named Rice.
Yeah, and the original case actually involved layoffs because of economic reasons. So when you think performance, you think you're discussing somebody's, tardiness or something, incompetence. But as I say, it's a very broad topic. So we're very careful that we don't discuss personnel matters without having braced the employee. Minutes. The Open Public Meetings Act requires minutes, but it's fairly vague, and really just skeletal minutes are required.
For executive session,
No,
Yes.
for any.
for any.
Oh, really?
Even for the open session. There have
Really,
to
all
be
you have to
minutes.
do is the actions taken, right?
Yeah, basically. Must be reasonably comprehensible minutes showing the time and place, the members present, the subjects considered, the actions taken, the vote of each member, and any other information required to be shown by law. So we really don't need, transcript
You
kind
don't
of
need
minutes.
chatty.
Yeah, some towns have pages and pages and pages of minutes. And for the
And
most part, they don't
so-and-so
mean
said,
anything.
and then so-and-so said.
And
Yeah, I've seen
And
those.
especially now, we've got videotapes and everything.
Yeah.
Now, the MLU, just so you're aware, has more stringent requirements. So those of you who sit on the planning board as a class,
Bless you.
three-member, or in the mayor's case, they have to show the names of persons appearing and addressing the board, of the persons appearing by attorney, the action taken, the findings, if any, and the reasons therefore. So they do have to have more information. But it's a practical matter. Even in the case of the planning board, they're kind of useless. Because if somebody's going to appeal, they have to get a transcript. And everything has to be incorporated in the memorializing resolution. So really the minutes don't have a whole lot to do with anything, but just, as I say, their minutes do need to be more detailed than ours. The other matter with respect to executive session is confidentiality of discussions. Now, some states have state laws that say you can't disclose confidential matters that are discussed in executive session. New Jersey does not have such a law. We discovered several years ago. So the council in 2011 adopted a section in the administrative code, which is in the Borough Code, which is online on your credit systems if you haven't stumbled across it. And it's a pretty good resource. And easy, much easier than the old books, those of you who are around. We used to get binders, and there were updates every time an ordinance was passed, and you had to go through and take out page 1123 through 24, and then 28 through 29. So now they're updated electronically, and you can do word searches and things. So if you are looking for something, feel free to call me, but if you don't...
So what's in the ordinance about confidentiality of these discussions?
Yes, that any and all matters properly discussed in executive or closed session from which the public is excluded pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act shall be deemed confidential, shall not be disclosed to anyone by an individual member or members of the governing body. At each annual reorganization meeting, each member of the governing body, as well as the clerk, the administrator, the attorney, and all other borough officials who attend executive session meetings have to sign, a certification saying they understand that. And we actually put it in the Borough Code so that if you violate it, you can be issued a municipal court summons. Whether that would stand up or not, I don't know. But I
Interesting.
think the primary purpose of the ordinance is to remind people that things discussed in executive session should only be released to the public on a vote of the entire governing body.
Did we sign that?
I hope so.
Oh, I just gotta remember.
Yeah, I think you did.
Okay.
Anthony
You
is
signed
pretty
it,
good
right?
about
Okay.
it. Yeah, and it just says
No,
that,
you
you know,
should.
I will not disclose matters discussed in executive session. Now, most things in executive session, we have to go out and disclose publicly at the appropriate time anyway, but there are certain things that never get disclosed, certain personnel matters, certain litigation strategies. You know, obviously, if you enter into a settlement.
Negotiation strategies.
Right, negotiation strategies, that sort of thing probably will never get released.
Right.
But most substantive actions will eventually have to be, confirmed in public, so. But like I said, those things that aren't, should be,
Do we do them periodically, review the executive ones and then release them?
we do, don't we?
We don't release them. If someone asks for it, I would send it to Jack and say, can I release these executive session minutes? And then he would say if we can, but we don't periodically
Don't
release them,
just
no.
kind of review them and decide at some point.
Well, the way we do it is Anthony, after he prepares them after every meeting, and he's very good and quick about it, sends them to me and I make my suggested changes or redactions. And then he keeps a redacted copy
Okay.
on hand as well as, now, I think you get the redacted copy to approve?
Yes,
Yeah.
I send you the redacted copy,
Right,
but you can
that's what I
see
thought.
through, you can read through the lines.
Right, but you show
can
where
see
it's
what would be
redacted.
redacted if someone were to
To
request it.
Oprah,
Right.
it's,
Right.
okay,
So the answer to your question
Oh,
is yes, you are
right.
approving the redactions
Got it.
at the time the minutes are approved.
okay.
And you can certainly change that if you think there's something in there. I mean, sometimes it's a judgment call. So if you think there's something in there that should be made public if somebody submits an Oprah request, then,
Have we
you're all the
gotten
ones that vote on it.
one for
I-
executive
Not
session?
recall an open request for executive session
No.
minutes, no.
But it happens.
Yeah.
And we have gotten them here over the years.
Okay.
Where somebody wants executive session minutes.
You mentioned that the three most common reasons for an executive session is purchase of property, personnel issues, and pending litigation. Is there anything else that must be in an executive session?
Well, negotiations would be probably.
The other things that have to be in executive session really are personnel matters and things that involve privacy rights. But beyond that, I mean, most things is in the discretion of the council. So you could discuss litigation strategy in public if you wish, or negotiation strategy to purchase property. You're allowed to do it in private because that would affect your ability to negotiate effectively. Same with, labor negotiations. You could do it in public, but
Why would you?
The PBA will be watching.
Yeah.
So, as I said, there are very few things that you have to do. And personnel, you can't do if the employee requests that it be in public. Speaking of minutes, they have to be released promptly. A lot of governing bodies and boards fall way behind in their minutes, and they get sued, both for open session.
Not Anthony.
Not Anthony, no. I assure you, not Anthony. And not Sandy Jones before Anthony.
Right.
We never had that issue here. And there's nothing in the statute that says what a reasonable time period is. And it was a Supreme Court case, I think, that held 45 days is a reasonable time period. But in my experience with Anthony, they're always done before the next meeting.
Yeah.
So there's nothing we have to worry about.
Yeah.
The other thing is sometimes we get Oprah requests for draft minutes, and those are not public records because they haven't been formally approved.
So you don't release them till the council has approved them?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Because they can get changed, they're not,
Right.
They're not final. They're considered advisory, consultative, deliberative material, ACD, which is a common exemption from Oprah. So it's like intra-borough communications about various things. But you have to be careful with that because you can't conduct business by email, for instance.
Right.
Because then you're violating the Open Public Meetings Act. So although they may not be disclosable under Oprah, because they're deliberative materials,
Right.
You know, you're probably violating the Public Meetings Act if the whole council's involved.
What?
Yep.
Let me make sure I get this right then. So the release of minutes are discretionary or they're required?
They're required, what's discretionary is what you're going to redact from
Okay.
executive session
Yeah.
minutes.
Gotcha.
And the same thought process goes into what you release as to what, you know, like I said, you should never release personnel matters or matters that affect individual privacy rights or medical issues, you know, people's medical issues, employees, you know, if they're out for a medical problem. The next one is financial matters, and Ralph could do a better job on this than me. There are just a couple of things I'd like to cover. The adoption, although it's done by resolution, it's really an ordinance. I don't know why they call it a resolution, except maybe to make it exempt from the mayoral veto, because you need 2 readings.
Right.
You know, you have to publish notice of the public hearing. It's really identical to the ordinance process. You know, some of the time periods are different, but, you know, basically you have to go through all those steps. The other is the cap. Just be aware there are 2 separate caps, one on the tax levy and one on the budget. And the cap ordinance that was on tonight, that's the old 1977 original cap. And it's set by the state at 2.5, it can go up to 3.5. So you can vote either by ordinance to either have the increase up to 3.5%, or you can bank it for the next 2 years, is it, Ralph?
Yeah.
You can bank it? So that's what you voted tonight, was to bank that. So if you do need it next year, if something catastrophic happened, and you needed to increase the budget by more than 3.5%, you would have that extra percentage banked. The capital budget, as most of you know, is different from the operating budget in that it's really more of a guideline. You're adopting the amount and things that you anticipate spending the money on, but before you spend the money, you've got to adopt a capital improvement fund ordinance, which you did tonight, for a specific item. So it doesn't have to necessarily be in the capital budget, but the amount is in there. So if you're buying a new dump truck, you need to adopt an ordinance appropriating money from the capital improvement fund in order to purchase the dump truck.
Is there a cash amount that qualifies for capital?
No, it's more useful life.
It's the useful life, okay.
Yep.
So anything 5 years and over?
Yes, and useful life has to be 5 years or greater.
Okay.
And the same applies to bonding. You can only bond capital items, and the local public bond law sets forth a useful life for various trucks and roads, different levels of roadways. I think they go up to 40 years, and you can only bond for that long for those various items. The temporary budget, we do that every year at the beginning of the year before the permanent budget is adopted, and it's what, 26-point-something%, Ralph?
Yes.
26.25% of the prior year's budget. Now, that's not per line item. That's as a
Just
total.
overall.
So the temporary budget, you allocate, but it can only go up to that amount of the prior year's total budget.
And that's what percent you said?
26.25%. I don't know how they can.
The temporary lasts how long? I mean, what the,
It's designed to last 3 months.
okay.
But that's assuming that
That your
budgets are
budget gets
adopted by
approved.
March 10th, as the law
Yeah.
provides.
Right.
Some years,
You don't even get the state aid numbers.
right, and it used to be the state had approved our budgets every year. Now it's once every 3 years.
Yes.
We can self-examine.
Really?
Right.
They don't, shoot.
But in the past, they had to do it every year, and sometimes they didn't approve the budget until September
Thank you.
Wow.
in really bad years. So the idea is only 3 months, but it had to go longer in many cases. Getting to bonds, the only way the borough can borrow money is through bonds or bond anticipation notes. We can't mortgage property. You know, you can't put a mortgage on Borough Hall. And as I said, the local bond law is specific as to how long you can borrow for different capital items. The useful life is specified in the statute. Bond anticipation notes are short-term borrowings, and they're for 1 year at a time, and after 3 years,
In the third year, you begin to pay.
you've got to start paying down some of the principal.
Right.
Paid off in total in 10 years, is that?
Yeah.
In 10 years, right. So it's a strategic decision to make, and those of you on the Finance Committee know, you know, when long-term bond rates come down, people often jump, municipalities often jump, you know, to go to long-term financing. But some things we never get long-term financing because they're already paid off,
Right.
you know, by the time it would even happen. So. Contracts, we have to bid, the general rule is we have to bid things over the bid threshold, which at the present time is $40,000 if we have a qualified purchasing agent.
Which we do, right? Don't we?
Correct,
Yeah.
we do. And we have to get quotes if it's over $6,000. So it's 15% of whatever the bid threshold is, and that number goes up. It's adjusted by the state.
What?
I'm sorry?
The quotes if over what?
Over 6,000.
6,000.
So 40,000.
And quotes are a lot more informal in that you only have to get 2, everybody gets 3. And you don't necessarily have to give to the low quote. I forget the exact language, but to paraphrase, it's in the best interest of the municipality. I mean, generally, it would be the low quote, but you do have more flexibility, more discretion in the case of a quote. Whereas with a formal bid, it's almost impossible to find that somebody's not a responsible bidder.
Responsive and responsible, right?
Yes. It's easier if their proposal or their bid is not in compliance with the specifications, but it has to be something material. You know, people have tried to reject bids on the fact that the engine was yellow instead of red as specified.
Wasn't that what we did last year with the landscaping company? The landscapers?
That was for performance.
Right.
On the
Right.
prior year.
That was a rare case where I think we actually had a good case of
Yeah,
not
'cause it's hard to-
awarding somebody.
Yeah, argue that sometimes.
Now, as a practical matter, it's probably going to have to be a pretty significant contract before somebody's going to challenge if they're rejected. You know, it's a $40,000 contract, they could spend 30 challenging it. But if we're talking about a $600,000 contract or $1 million contract, you know, it's probably worth it.
Some contractors make it a practice to go through, they're second on the bid, they'll go through the first low bidders, and I've seen bids thrown out without the NTE 20,000 from the bid bonds. I've seen contractors get rejected for that, silly as it is.
Absolutely.
But you have to have it.
And, you know, as you know with public bidding, there are certain contractors, and we know who they are, who will just plan on having change orders.
Yeah, they bid low and then you get hit with change orders and end up going over the highest
Like the
bidder.
D and the yacht, change order, and
Yeah.
the original contracts.
And change orders always cost more money. Now, one thing is change orders have to be approved in advance in writing by the governing body. You know, and a lot of contractors and engineers will just, okay, change orders, they're really not legal. They're supposed to come here, except for what they call minor field modifications. And for certain big projects, the council has designated John McDowell as I forget the technical term, but in any event, the person authorized to make minor field modifications, which are small change orders, that don't really affect substantially the...
So if that happens and somebody's abused the change order process, does that now make them no longer a responsible bidder for a future job?
It's very hard to prove.
Yeah.
And especially in New Jersey. You know, some states are stricter, but in New Jersey, it's hard to prove that that person or that contractor abused the process. You know, you'd have to have experts, and it's, like I said, it's very, very difficult here to reject a bidder as not being responsible. Now, if they don't have the required amount of equipment or something like that, you can do it. But just on past performance, the fact that, you know, you got into a litigation with them over the amount of change orders, for instance, doesn't mean you can reject them in future, even if the municipality wins. You know, there are cases, yeah, it's crazy, in all honesty. but it is.
So what's to prevent a bidder from intentionally lowballing, knowing that they're gonna then go for change orders and they're, I mean,
Nothing.
Because it's supposed to be a firm fixed price contract, and it's looked upon in a very bad light when a change order, it's the lowest, how do I say it right? You're not always going with the lowest bidder, you're going with the lowest competent bidder.
right?
And when you have a track record of being a competent bidder, I think even though they might be the next highest, we have a way of being able to choose that bidder based on past performance, not necessarily the lowest bid price.
Right, but the bar is set very high for us.
Yes.
Also, if they have a reputable bonding company, the bonding company would take a second look at large bid spreads, because they don't want to be in a situation where they're gonna have a bond called, and they're gonna have to come in and complete, or, take over the
Yeah.
Okay,
job.
but what I heard different from Jack was that you can't really necessarily use that history of the,
It's difficult.
yeah,
It has to be
It's
very
difficult.
well
It's not impossible.
documented,
I
yeah.
mean, there are certain contracts. And the other thing is, some of them will front load the bid.
Right.
They'll allocate it unreasonably, artificially, I should say, between various items in the specs. So there are ways to do it, but it's not easy.
Can actually,
Steve,
Steve, did you have a comment?
I'm just curious, the change order process, I mean, what is the process in terms of somebody approving it? Like I said, the minor field things, which, $1,500 to $2,000 happen all the time, but anything in excess of that,
We're gonna
Yeah, the
stop when
contractor
we
has
get
to
to the
submit
end
a
here.
request
We're just
in
gonna
writing,
finish C, and then we're gonna
which
go
is
to
then
executive.
approved by the engineer or Doug or whomever is administering the contract. But then it has to go to the council in advance, before the work is done, and it has to be approved by the council by
is that always
resolution.
done?
Yes. Well, I can't say always, but.
Well, hopefully if you have a good contract administration, the good contractor say, obviously, because it does the work, it's like, well, show me where I approve that, and you just,
And the
honor it.
resolution should put the original amount of the contract, the amount
Right.
Yeah.
As
as
changed.
amended by prior change orders, and the net amount of the contract as a result of the change order that's being approved. And they often come through 4 or 5 at a time. And there are going to be change orders in every job, so the mere fact that there are change orders
It's not a bad thing, yeah.
is not necessarily a bad thing.
It's a high-risk game, though, even for contractors. I mean, it's, it's.
Yeah, a lot of times you find things that you had no idea were there.
No, to play that game where I'll blow ball, then I'll, make the money back in change orders. That's usually, they probably won't be in business too long if that was your business practice.
Yeah, then they close and open up under a different name.
Because you're not paying
That's
sales,
what happens.
then you're probably getting hit with payment claims, and then they come right back on the indemnity back to you, and.
Yeah,
But you're right, the bonding company is somewhat of a,
yeah, a check and balance
right,
kind
a
of.
regular.
Full disclosure, I mean, I do that, that's part of what I do, so.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's,
the bonding or the
Well,
low,
bonding.
or the low bidding?
Yeah, low bidding, yeah.
That's how he knows how to do it.
Okay, exceptions.
Exceptions, and these are things
I
that
didn't
you
see
don't
that.
have to bid. You don't have to get quotes,
Right.
the professional services, and that's fairly narrowly defined. It's attorneys, engineers, architects, doctors, people who have some kind of advanced training and a certification or something like that. Extraordinary unspecifiable services, which is the typical state jargon term, is something you can't write specs for. If you want something open-ended, like the police department studies say, where you're seeking proposals to do a job and you're not sure exactly what you want done, and you can't put it in the specs. If you can't put it in the specs, you can't use that exception.
Could you use it for something that's proprietary? Like suppose you have, Johnson Controls, and now you need, some new equipment that goes with that, but it only works on their software. Is that considered in the US?
You can limit the specs to that, but even if there's only one potential vendor, you still have to go out to bid,
Okay,
which doesn't make any sense, but
Yeah.
that's what you have to do.
Huh.
And most times you have to put or equivalent. You can't put Ford F-150 pickup truck. You can put Ford F-150 pickup truck or equivalent, but you can't limit it
can't
to
limit, yeah, to a
one
particular,
particular brand.
Mhm.
And there has to be a good reason for things in the specs. Fire trucks are the prime abuser of that. No, really, I think there are only 2 companies.
that make fire
Yeah,
trucks.
And they throw things in there that their company does and the other one doesn't. Not private companies, the manufacturers.
Right, yeah.
You know, they'll put in things that don't really affect the performance of the truck, but they put it in the specs that, you know, they have it and the other company
Yeah,
doesn't.
it makes them a source-controlled vendor that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Aren't they all on state contract anyway?
For the most
No?
part now.
Oh,
And that's the next.
oh, state contracts.
Exception of state contracts, because the state has gone out and bid certain things. And if you want to buy that item or that service in accordance with the state specs, then you don't have to go through the bidding process. And because they do things in larger volume, the prices are often better. And similar are co-ops, the county co-ops for buying salt or things like that.
Blacktop.
Asphalt, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's something like we recently discussed tonight, the speed study that was done, the speed limit study.
Mhm.
Would that be something considered an EUS, or you don't have real specs for it?
It's probably a professional service, it's probably done by engineers, so that would be the exception. But if it's not, you would have to, and it's probably under the bid threshold. You know, we're not talking about a large amount. But if it's over $40,000 for something, you'd have to bid it. If it's over $6,000, you'd have to get quotes. But it's probably a professional service anyway, so it'd probably be exempt. Competitive contracting is a fairly new concept that the state made great big deal about, and it's more complicated.
It is, it's very
than bidding.
complicated.
The only thing we've ever used it for is some people's favorite topic, the dumpster squib house, because when you're limited to architects who are, or contractors who are experienced in historic structures, it may make some sense. But in general, I found it to be more trouble than public bidding. Even though it gets you around bidding, you have to go through so many, jump through so many hoops and fill out so many forms, it's not worth it. But that's just my own.
Prevailing wage.
Prevailing wage is the reason that public contracts cost twice as much as private contracts. And basically it means on any public work, you've got to pay the equivalent of union wages, even if it's a non-union shop. And the state publishes the prevailing wages. And there are all kinds of procedural requirements for both the contractor as well as the borough. You know, the wages have to be posted and they have to be part of the specs. And public work is very broadly defined, so that you have to pay prevailing wage.
I have a question. Do you have to use union employees?
You do not have
No.
to use
You just
union
have to
employees.
use
You have to
union.
pay
Pay
prevailing
the
wage.
rate. So if you call the local plumber, you know, and he could said, oh, I could do that for $20, it's like, well, no, you can't. We have to
You
pay.
have to pay him $75.
That's right. And the state comes around and monitors.
They do.
this.
They ask for your files on prevailing wages.
Long Hill Township had something, and I forget the exact.
It's usually the
public
union
record.
people that come around and
But
ask.
they had their old town hall, which was a one-room schoolhouse, renovated and restored.
Mhm.
And the original specs didn't include like a fire suppression system, in part because the town didn't have the money at the time, so the architect didn't approve it. And then it was added on later, and it didn't, by itself, didn't require a prevailing wage, but they held it as part of the overall contract. And the state just has these random checks, and they drive around, and unions turn you in all the time.
Yeah, unions are always coming and checking. They like to do that.
You know, I think they have
Actually, they
people,
would, yeah.
full-time employees checking to make sure, because, or else they're not gonna get any jobs.
Mhm. And pay to play.
Pay-to-play, the state passed a pay-to-play law, which says that any contract in excess of $17,500, any contractor who made a reportable contribution, which I think is over $300,
Yeah.
You can't award it to that contractor unless you go through a fair and open process, which is really just a charade, because very political towns have a fair and open process so they can award contractors to their big donors. And there's really nothing preventing that. And a fair and open process is not bidding, it's putting out an RFP. And then you can award it to anyone who submitted a proposal, and they award it to whomever they wish anyway.
But they still have to fill out the pay-to-play
Yeah,
form.
right,
You have to have that on
We all have
file.
to fill out the forms every year.
Right.
And there are about 3 of them. ELAC has one, and
Mm-hmm.
DCA has one. They're all online now.
So $300 was for the individual contractor?
For the contribution,
For
yeah.
the contribution to any one candidate or.
And that's for a job more than 17.5, is that what you said?
Correct,
Mm-hmm.
correct. Now, the borough has a stricter one, because the state law allows the municipality to adopt a stricter one. And basically, the borough's ordinance says that you can't award a contract to anyone who's given more than a reportable amount, fair and open
Just-
process or not.
Wow. Okay.
So, you know, and we've had some people who couldn't.
It didn't comply.
We were going to hire a law firm last year in connection with one of the investigations.
Huh.
And they had given money to the Somerset County Republican organization or Democrat, I'm not sure, organization, so they weren't, they couldn't contract with the borough because of the borough's pay-to-play policy.
Wow. Why did they do that? I'm just curious.
They talked about it for a long time, and that's
Okay.
they just decided that. What they
So
wanted
no
to do.
matter what the amount.
Oh, it has to be reportable, over 300.
Over 300, but no
there's
matter what the
there's no-
contract
no
amount
getting
is.
around it.
Oh, no matter what the contract
Right.
is.
Yeah, so if you're
If
hiring a
they-
lawyer
if-
for $2,000 job, they wouldn't get it even, or
Right.
something like that.
If they've given.
But if they donated, 250, then that would
That-
be.
They're okay,
okay.
that's correct.
Yeah.
So you'll see a lot of $299.
Yeah, contributions.
But it's,
I think can we stop there?
sure.
How about that? Because then we just have,
Yeah,
yeah, and
actually,
then that's about a half an hour's worth for the next meeting.
Sure, sure.
Because we have some executive session
I know,
stuff, so
yes, we do.
let's stop there. That was a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome, thanks.
Anybody have any questions on that section?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, yeah.
Hopefully it's informative.
Okay, anybody want to move for executive session?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Move that we come out of
And
executive
John
session.
seconded.
Got that?
Okay.
John second.
So we're back in public. We have a motion for adjournment.
I move.
Second.
So
All in
adjourned.
favor? Aye.